Hi there, and welcome to Boneology. Have you ever wondered what bone looks like? Well, today we're going to talk about the structure of bone and travel through some of the basic components of what makes bone, bone. We will start off by taking a look at what bone is composed of, as well as what you can see macroscopically, that is, with your own eyes, and what you can see microscopically, so with assistance from a microscope. We will wrap up by talking about some of the processes that bone uses to repair damage throughout its life. Let's get started by taking a look at what bone is made of. Bone is a complex tissue that is made up of organic and inorganic material, specifically bone cells, collagen, matrix proteins, and mineral. The organic material, like collagen, provides flexibility to the bone, while the inorganic material, like mineral, allows bone to withstand the extreme pressures the body experiences without breaking. Bone functions as a structural support for the body, acting as a lever and anchor for muscles to attach to and allow for bodily movement, and as a depository for minerals. It undergoes structural change throughout life through modeling and remodeling. We will come back to these processes at the end. Let's take a look at how bone is organized at a macroscopic level. At a macroscopic level, bone can be broken down into dense cortical bone, sometimes called compact bone, and trabecular bone, sometimes called cancellous or spongy bone. Spongy bone is a lightweight, porous type of bone that helps reduce load and direct force to cortical bone. It is made up of tiny, rod-like structures called trabeculae and can be found at the ends of long bone. Cortical bone forms around the outer surface of bone and helps with body structure and weight distribution. Let's travel deeper and take a closer look at cortical bone here. Throughout bone tissue are osteons, which are formed around an existing blood vessel on the surface of bone. Osteons have a central canal that carry the blood supply and nerves and are surrounded by layers of concentric lamellae. Concentric lamellae are the small plates of tissue that form in layers around the central canal. Circumferential lamellae form around the outer portion of bone. Between osteons are interstitial lamellae. They are non-circular and fill in the areas around osteons. They are remnants of osteons that were partially resorbed during the process of bone remodeling. Resorption is the removal of cells, tissue, or structures by gradual breakdown into component materials. Within lamellae are lacunae, which are the small tear-shaped circles. Inside each lacunae are osteocytes, which are bone cells. From the lacuna are small pathways called canaliculi. They are responsible for communication and providing nutrients. Now that we've taken a closer look at cortical bone, let's take a look at spongy bone. Trabecular bone, or spongy bone, is a lightweight, porous type of bone tissue that helps reduce load and direct force to cortical bone. Again, it is made up of tiny, rod-like structures called trabeculae and can be found at the ends of long bone. These tiny trabeculae are the interconnecting plates found in spongy bone and provide structural support and strength. Trabecular bone is very flexible, which is why it directs force to the hard, dense cortical bone. Spongy bone looks different from compact bone as it does not have osteons. Now that we've covered the two main types of bone, let's travel further and look at the cellular structure of bone. At the cellular level, bone is composed of BMUs, that is, basic multicellular units. There are four main kinds of cells: osteoblasts, osteocytes, osteoclasts, and bone lining cells. The prefix osteo comes from the Greek word for bone. To begin with, bone has its own stem cells. These are called osteoprogenitor cells. These cells are the precursors to the more specialized bone cells, like osteocytes and osteoblasts, which assist with producing bone matrix. At the cellular level, osteoblasts are responsible for the deposition of new bone tissue and are found on the surface of bone. Osteoblasts make new bone as your body grows, but help rebuild and repair bone when it's broken. The word blast comes from the Greek word for growth. During the formation of new bone, osteoblasts come together and begin to make a material called osteoid, an unmineralized gelatinous organic tissue that eventually has minerals added. Once it is mineralized, it becomes hard and strong and is deposited as lamellae or layers in bone matrix. When osteoblasts are done making new bone, they become osteocytes or bone lining cells. Osteoblasts that get buried in bone material during the creation of new bone can trap themselves in bone matrix and become osteocytes. They are found in lacunae and are embedded in bone tissue. They are star-shaped and can be found in compact bone more often than spongy bone. Osteocytes are surrounded by fluid which signals to the osteocytes, which then signal to osteoblasts and bone lining cells to begin the process of bone remodeling. Bone lining cells are flat bone cells that cover the outside surface of all bones. They are formed from retired or inactive osteoblasts. They are responsible for the movement of calcium in and out of bone, as well as for the activation of osteoclasts. Osteoclasts are responsible for bone resorption. They secrete enzymes that break down hydroxyapatite crystal, one of the inorganic components of bone that helps make it hard, during the process of resorption. The word clast comes from the Greek word for break. A good way to remember the difference between osteoblast and osteoclast is that osteoblast has a B in it and is responsible for building new bone. Osteoclast has a C in it and is responsible for consuming or breaking down bone. They work with osteoblasts, the cells that help form new bone, to reshape bone throughout an individual's life. Now that we've traveled through the structure of bone, we will talk more in depth about the process of bone modeling and remodeling and why these processes are important. Bone modeling is the primary process where bone is resized and reshaped during growth, and bone remodeling is the secondary process of bone turnover that is important for maintenance. During bone modeling, formation of bone occurs either by osteoblasts, the bone-building cells, or through the resorption of bone by osteoclasts, the cells that break down bone. Bone remodeling is the coupled process of formation-resorption, resulting in increased bone mass and bone maintenance. This process is coupled, meaning that both of these actions happen together. Bone remodeling is important as it allows bone to repair microdamage, fractures, and mechanical stress in bone. Mechanical stress is the force that bone experiences. The amount of weight bearing is called mechanical loading. Weight bearing activities like running, jumping, and even weight training can stimulate the process of bone remodeling to better accommodate different loading pressure. This is how bone responds to mechanical stress, as everyone experiences microdamage on a daily basis from activities as benign as walking around. As bone matures, it will adapt to better handle these daily stresses. Now that we've traveled through some of the basic components of bone, hopefully you have a better understanding of bone microstructure and the important function bone plays in your body. Thanks for watching! References and citations can be found in the Google Drive link in the details section.